you show your machine and when
Like
you're
on
trying to,
this, yes, I could, but
yeah,
I don't think I'll be using it today. When I am going to be showing Safari or
okay.
something, I usually do zoom it in. But always, and if I'm in the middle of that, bring that up and I could redo it if it's an issue.
Well, thanks. I know that's why sometimes I'm like, my head is right on the screen to try to see what you got.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okie doke. I'll put in all the Zoom hotkeys and everything. Fantastic. All right. So it was 3.5 weeks ago that Apple had this this great presentation, and it was primarily the Apple iPhone event only. And with that, they introduced the new Apple Watch 8, which is the 8th iteration, but we are on Apple Watch 9, which seems weird for the software. And then they introduced the Ultra, which we're going to talk a bit about also. Then new AirPods, the AirPods Pro 2, and I've gotten mine. And if you already have the AirPods Pro, no, I don't see a big reason to upgrade. I like them a lot better. And the only reason I really upgraded is because I use my AirPods a lot, and the new ones just help. They do the AirPods Pro, both the original and the 2, have active noise canceling, and that's really important for on airplane flights and things like that. Then they came out and introduced the new iPhone 14 and 14 Pro, and we'll discuss that and the differences. We'll get into some of the carrier information. And again, as we go along, if there's any questions at all. And then I'm going to start diving into some of the features on iOS 16, because this is a big and good update. And it's fantastic. Now, if you got a new device, it'll come with iOS 16. If you have an old device, that's up to you. I wouldn't do it if I was needing if it was critical that my phone was needed right away or anything else. If you're going on a trip, don't update right away, because I always say wait till iOS 16.1, but it's been pretty darn solid. So anyway, this again was the event. These were the 3 new categories: the iPhone 14 and 14 Pro, Apple Watch 8, and new AirPods. Just briefly on the Apple Watch, they made some improvements. The 8. So I was on the Apple Watch 6. I skipped the 7, and I was vacillating between the 8 and the Ultra. I ended up going with the Ultra, which we'll talk about in a minute. But they've improved some of the sensitivity in it. They also, I really want to encourage people that don't currently have an Apple Watch. You should think about it from a safety factor. It has fall detection. And this, I think, got introduced in the Apple Watch 4, if I'm not mistaken. And what's interesting is I was doing a first Saturday class at Fireside, and I was just talking about fall detection on the watch. And when we had our break halfway through, you know how the door at St. Mark's for the bathroom used to stick. And we had just talked about fall detection, and a guy that was in the class came back in and said, "Hey, Ken, the watch just went off on fall detection." And I said, "What?" And he says, "Yeah, you know how that door sticks? I kind of had to pound on the door to get the door open, and it popped up and said, 'Have you fallen?'" And so it was our first case of that. So anyway, it has gotten so much better. But the beauty of fall detection is if you do take a fall, it will vibrate on your wrist, and it will pop up, and it'll say something like, "Well, did you just fall?" And you would, if you see that, you would tap it and say, yes, I did fall, or no, I didn't fall, or in this case, I fell, but I'm okay, or I did not fall. So what the reason for that is, it waits a little while before it calls somebody on your medical ID, or before it calls somebody 911. So, and by the way, if you're in another country, they know, like in Europe, it's 611 and things like that. So it knows where you are, and it's going to call emergency services wherever you are. The phone or the watch, if it does call someone in your contacts, or your medical ID rather, and SOS, it will become a two-way speakerphone without you having to do anything. Let's say you fell and your hands, you couldn't get to it. It will do everything. It will speak to you and speak back. So you do not have to touch it or do anything. But if you didn't fall, you want to press and say, no, I didn't fall and I'm okay. Or I fell, but I'm okay. I don't need SOS. Any questions on fall detection? It's really quite good. And it's getting better all the time. The other thing is, if you get any of the Apple Watches, not the SE version, but any of the Apple Watches, the 5 or newer has the EKG or ECG in it, that you rest your finger on it and it will do an EKG. It's for over 30 seconds. And then that goes to your phone, and you can then send it to a doctor or do what you want. But you just simply put it's usually your index finger on the crown, kind of where the little red round dot is, or the red ring, excuse me. Then the other thing that's in the last, since the iPhone 6, or I'm sorry, the Apple Watch 6, we've had a blood oxygen sensor. And the blood oxygen sensor tells you your saturation levels. And the beauty of both of these, and then of course it always has, all the Apple Watches have a heart rate monitor on there that's not on constantly, but it comes up periodically, and it puts an incredible chart together so that if you have any heart issues, they can go back in and see what happened over time. Because more than a particular pulse or rhythm, how your heart has been over time is a huge indicator. A very good friend of mine, he's 82 now, and skied up until this last year. He may ski this coming year, not sure. But he had the Apple Watch 5, which was the first one to have the EKG on it. But it was something that you had to download and activate about a month or two after the watch came out. So he hadn't activated it yet because he had no heart issues. He was very healthy. But even though he didn't use the EKG, he was in New York to see his grandson perform at Carnegie Hall. And he was there a few days early, and he's walking around New York, and his Apple Watch alerted him and said, you may be having atrial fibrillation. And he'd never had any incident of it. He wasn't using the EKG, but this was derived from the fact that he had the Apple Watch since day one, and he had tons of data. And so the data showed up, and while the pulse can't necessarily pick up AFib, it saw this anomaly and said, ooh, that might be. So he immediately went to Cedars-Sinai, and sure enough, he was having AFib pretty severely, and they kept him in for 2 days and gave him some blood thinners, and he was able to attend his grandson's concert, and then came back here. And since then, he's been treated with what's called ablation, which takes AFib is where your lower chamber of your heart is firing not in sync with the upper chamber, and it's kind of going too much. It's fibrillating too fast. And so that was fixed by just essentially telling some of those muscles not to do it with the thing. Go ahead, Barbara, with a question.
Yeah, you mentioned the data on the heart monitor. How do you access on the watch? Where do you locate that?
Well, the heart monitor is just it's actually just a symbol. And let me go ahead and I can show you that now, because we have this new thing that I can watch. I can display my Apple Watch on my iPhone. And I'll show you how to do that. So there's my iPhone, and I'm going to say, others. There we go. So now I go to settings and I go down to accessibility. And then I go to Apple Watch mirroring. Now you have to have you have to have iOS 16 and you have to have a little bit newer phone, but I'm not control nearby devices. I want Apple Watch mirroring. There we go. So now my watch will come up on the screen. And so, oops, it activated Siri. So on the side of your watch, you have the crown. So on my phone, I could click that just like I did. And I move it around and I look for, and I'm going to see where the regular one is, the regular heart rate one right here. See right in the middle there, the one that's got like a thing. I press, oh, I'm sorry, that's the EKG. My mistake.
But the 30-second hold works on that one.
What's that?
The 30-second on the ground works on that particular app.
Yeah, but only if you have a Apple Watch. The SE, it won't do it.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. So it was just the heart rate. So it's this big red heart right here. That should be it. Hopefully that's the right one. I have a couple different ones.
But the other one gives you a graph.
Well, I know, but if you don't have a watch that does it, and she asked about the constant heart rate. So, and I'll show you the EKG while we do it, which is a good point. So I'll go to the EKG right here, and I rest my finger on the crown. And then it came off. It's hard to do it because we're displaying it. But then after 30 seconds, when it's done, it'll send that to your iPhone. But the rest of the time, then if you want to go see your heart rate, you go into your phone and you can see it in the health app. And in the health app, oh, I haven't fired it up on the new phone. Okay. So if I go, here's my resting heart rate. And so it just shows that and all your stuff. So the phone is where you go back and see your history. Now, another thing is if you're out for a walk and let me get that back up on here. So if you're out for a walk, so if I go into the fitness app right here, let's say I'm going to go do an indoor walk, or let's say an outdoor walk. When I press that, it gives a 3-second step down. And then you'll constantly have, you'll constantly have your heart rate going, and it's using it the whole time. So that'll use a lot more battery than just the periodic one. So then I'll go and I'll end that. That's my workout for today. I'm happy. All right. Does that answer it?
Question. How did you get to that screen with all the icons that have the EKG icon, the heart?
You press icon? Okay, so the crown, the round crown.
Yeah.
Don't press and hold because that brings up Siri. But if I just press it, I get this. But
Okay.
some people have theirs set to be a list. This
Okay.
is the traditional one where you go around. And I think I might be able to say large, oh, hang on. Launch heart monitor. Oh. Launch ECG. Yeah.
Huh.
So launch heart. Launch heart. Yeah. Launch heart rate monitor. Because I don't know what the actual name of it is. There it is.
There it is.
Yeah. So I said launch heart rate monitor and that did it. So that's the quickest way to do it. And again, Siri on the watch is press and hold, or you can say the word hey and the word Siri and it comes up, but one of your other devices might also.
Okay. One other quick question. How do you go back and forth to either have it in the list view or in the icon view like you have it?
It's in settings. So
Okay.
you go here and you go to the gray gear
Right.
and you go to app view and you can either be in grid view or list view, just like on the screen.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Gosh, it's so nice to be able to display the Apple Watch. It's, gosh, when I do Apple Watch classes, I used to have my iPhone on a tripod looking at my watch and all that. So
Hey, Ken, can you review real quick how you do that? How do you?
if I get into that, you bet. Let's go back and start again. We'll go to the Apple Watch. Or I'm sorry, I go to settings on the phone, accessibility. And that tells you that this is also a great feature for somebody that needs to configure a watch, but his sight impaired or something. Go down to accessibility. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in settings and accessibility, and then it's called Apple Watch mirroring. And then I turn it on, and then without doing anything, it shows up on my watch. I mean, the watch shows up on here.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a sweet find.
That is sweet.
Yep.
Great for demos.
Absolutely. And again, with it up, I should show you this. So I'm going to everything I've been doing, I've been touching on the watch. I'm going to take and touch the crown, and I can move everything around. I'm touching on my phone. That's not on my watch. That's on my phone. And another little key is the oval button right below it. So if I go back to the home screen by pressing the crown one time, and again, press and release on the crown, because if you press and hold, it's Siri. But if I hit the button down here, this is like your most recent apps. And you can go through them. And it has a list of your most recent. So.
Did you say that using the mirror uses up more battery life quickly?
No, the thing about the battery life is if you're using the workout,
yeah,
because what it is, it turns on the lights that look at your veins to get your pulse, but it's not an appreciable amount. I mean, the batteries on the Apple Watch are pretty darn amazing, but it will use a little more battery. So it's not something I recommend having on all the day. But what you can do is there's another one I use, and it just it shows the trends on there. And I think it's Heart Watch, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right. Mary, go ahead with your question. You need to unmute yourself. I'm not good at reading.
It's true. That's true. Sorry. A couple of things. First of all, what you went into regular settings. I always make the change on the watch app on my phone. Is this replacing that?
No, it's you can do it both places.
Okay. And the second thing is it's more of a comment on the ECG. Isn't that what ECK, whatever it is?
Yeah.
There was just a
electrocardiogram, and it's commonly called an EKG, but it's officially an ECG.
Yeah. Well, there was a thing about young athletes and how sometimes, like the teenagers in high school, there's consideration about recommending an ECG, and then they said at the end, because it's so expensive, it would cost, the healthcare stuff a lot. And I'm just wondering if it's as easy as using a watch,
Well, okay,
if
so
this could be started to help with that issue.
well,
Anyway,
yes and
that's
no.
just
So
it.
the thing about it is this is fairly accurate. But it's not, and my good friend's an ER doc, and I've shown him to him, and he looks at it, and it's just pretty amazing. There is another device that I wholeheartally recommend, and I'm sure I can get Al to put a link in it. It's AliveCor, ALIVECOR.com, and that's the Cardia device. And they make two of those, and one does a single lead EKG, which is this, but when you go into, and I'll tell the story in a sec because it's kind of humorous, but anyway, they also make a 6-lead EKG, and that device is only $149. But there's more to just, and again, these aren't diagnostic tools. They're more tools that you can use, and it will alert you if there's an anomaly. But there's two things that happen that way. Like I know when I get dehydrated, I get what's a little bit of I feel like a flutter in my heart. So I immediately go in and I take the ECG, the EKG, and it says everything's fine. So I know that it's just an anomaly from me being slightly dehydrated. So, but it kind of reinforces it. On the other hand, if there are people that are of a bit of a hypochondriac nature, they'll look at any little anomaly and, oh my gosh, it's going to be the worst thing ever. And it's amazing. But my little story about the EKG, and it has to do, well, and you heard my friend's story, Bill. And actually, before I disconnect my phone, Bob, is your question about me showing the watch or anything, or is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Mary, I'll come back to my story. So that's while I've got my phone still hooked up. Go ahead, Bob.
I'm not showing that particular command and accessibility.
And are you running
watch mirroring?
How old's your phone?
Brand new. It's a 14 Pro.
Okay, and
running,
you're obviously an iOS 16. And what?
I'm on 16.02.
And what's your watch?
That's what I was going to ask. How do you tell which version your watch is? I don't remember.
You can go to the watch app.
Okay, let me do that.
And go general. And then about. And like it says, and it'll tell you what your version of the software is too. So
it doesn't tell you which watch.
Okay, version 9 means you're on the new OS. Yeah, and then you go to model number and it will tell you. That model number, you just search that and it'll tell you which one it is. But how long ago did you get it, Bob?
The watch, I think about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, so it's probably a 6 or a 7. But that's interesting. I am not sure. I haven't wiped my other watch, but we can check that. But if it's not available, I would bet that it has to do with the thing, if in here, because it should be in there down physical and motor under accessibility.
I think Al might have found an article here already.
Of course. All right. Hey, you guys, we have to give props to Al. He does such a great job on this. And, I provide him like the 4 links that are kind of the stuff I go on, but man, he searches this stuff while he's listening and gets us pertinent stuff like all that. So the chat gets emailed out, but you can always save that after you get disconnected.
Oh, here, let me quote a sentence in that article. reads with iOS 16 and watch OS 9, users are able to blah, 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 blah. So
Well,
sounds
you're
like
on
I
9.
should- Yeah, sounds like I should be able to do it.
You know what you might do is do a hard reboot on your watch and on your
Okay.
phone, and then see if that helps.
Okay, will do.
Yeah, and it'll be good to know, but because it didn't say anything about it didn't say anything about what models, huh?
This particular article, no.
Good. Okay. Well, we can dig into that.
But
So
the article's from back in July also. So
oh, okay, yeah. So the my AFib story.
thank you.
You bet. My AFib story is I was actually it was this time of year. It was October. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was April. Well, I had bought the little Cardia device when it came out because the Apple Watch didn't have an ECG at the time. So for $99, I said, oh, this is great, because I had stents put in, gosh, now it's 8 years ago, and everything's great, but I would occasionally get what I call a flutter I felt in my chest. And my cardiologist says, oh yeah, you throw an extra a PCV or something like that, it's nothing to worry about. But I'm kind of more aware of my heart now after having stents put in. And so I said, well, this Cardia device, I read about it, it came out, and I said, well, I'll get one of those. So I ordered it for $99, and I showed it at MacNexus. I showed it. I do for Rotary. Sometimes I'll do a tech class, and I had the device 2 weeks, and I woke up one morning, and I felt great. I woke up at 5. Had to go to the bathroom, went back to sleep to about 5:30, which is about when I normally wake up. And I was fine at 5. When I woke up at 5:30, my heart, what I envisioned in my mind was the squirrels going around the squirrel cage like this. It was spinning like crazy. And I'm going, and I don't feel bad. I mean, it's almost kind of energetic, but I'm like, man. So I immediately put my regular Apple Watch on, which didn't do EKG, but it did heart rate. And the heart rate was slightly elevated. My resting rate used to be about 68, and it was like at 78 or something like that. And then I put my blood pressure cuff on, and sure enough, it said my heart rate was 78, 80, something like that. So I'm like, man, what's up with that? And I go, oh, I've got my little Cardia single lead EKG in the pocket of my pants because I had demonstrated it the night before, and it was fine. I did it for the Lincoln Hills group. So I brought the Cardia out, and I put both my thumbs on it, and it takes 30 seconds. And then it fires up on the phone. It said, you may be in atrial fibrillation. And I've never had anything like that before. And I go, So of course I immediately Googled it, and I read about it, and I said, okay, it looks like atrial fibrillation. So I went in the shower because I'm going to drive myself to the hospital because I felt fine. So I was driving myself to the ER. I went in the hospital, or went in the shower, which actually I shouldn't have done because it's a vasodilator. But anyway, I got out, I put my Scotty vest on, I put my iPad in one pocket, I put my iPhone in the other. I put all my charging cables. So if I'm going to the hospital, I got to take all my Apple stuff, right? And then I even boxed up, or put my computer in my computer bag and took it to the car because I figured if I needed to, I could get it out of the car. But so I walk into the ER, and I don't want to be that person that says, hey, I've diagnosed myself on Google and I've got atrial fibrillation. So I just kind of said, hey, I've got this little bit of stuff. And they go, okay, well, they put you, when you have anything like that, they put you to the head of the list, and they put me back in one of the rooms. And this guy comes in, and he's wheeling in this big, I'm sure it's $100,000 machine that has a 12 lead EKG on it. He was a young technician. And he starts hooking it up, and he says, hey, well, I said, hey, when we do this, do you mind if I if I do this at the same time? He goes, oh no. Well, he says, what's that? And I says, well, it does the EKG, and that's how come I came in. And sure enough, it gave the same printout that his did. Now he can't analyze it because he's not the doc, but he said, man, I know somebody that could use that because of its ability to give an indication about AFib. So then a little while later, one of the nurses comes in and we're talking and stuff. And she goes, and I said, hey, yeah, you know, or this. And she goes, or no, she said, the technician told me to look at this. So came in and looked at it, and it was so brand new right then. It had only been out a little bit. And the nurse said, oh man, I know somebody that could use that. So the doctor comes in, and he's a young guy, and he was pretty good, pretty funny. And I was talking to him a bit. He says, yeah, you're in AFib. We're going to give you some IV and stuff. And I said, yeah, it was amazing. I used this little device like this, and it gave me a thing. And I showed him on the phone, and he goes, here, let me try that. And so I'm sure we violated every HIPAA regulation there is, but he did it, and he did himself, and I showed him what it was. And actually in that, you have the ability, because the app tracks it, you can say, this wasn't me, so it doesn't affect your history. And the ending of the story was funny, because so he says, well, and the best part about this is because I knew I was fine at 5, and I knew the night before I had tested it and didn't have it, but it was between 5 and 5:30 that my AFib started in the morning. He had all the time in the world to convert me, because what AFib is, your lower chamber is not in sync with your upper chamber. And so what happens is you're not fully profusing blood out of your lower chamber. And because it's going so fast, it doesn't really make a full pump. It only pumps a little bit. Therefore, my heart rate that I had been checking was based on my upper chamber giving a pulse like it should. But this one, the upper chamber is doing this, and the bottom one's doing this. And so it really like cavitates. And so it doesn't send all the blood down, and the blood will pool in your lower chamber. And when blood pools, it coagulates. And when it coagulates, it clots. And if you throw that clot, you've had a stroke. So they're really concerned about that. So with mine, we knew that it happened after 5 a.m. So when I'm in the thing there, they look at your clotting factor. They go, man, we got 6 hours to deal with this. We're in no big hurry. So they put the IVs in my arm, and it's this medication that's supposed to put the two in sync. Well, it wasn't working. So they kept monitoring me and go, oh yeah, we got more time. So after a while, they said, well, it's not converting. So they came in, and he said, well, I think we may have to shock you. And it's like the paddles they use when they resuscitate somebody on the heart, but it's not as severe a shock, but it's pretty severe. So he says, yeah, we may have to shock you. We'll wait and we'll see, but let's get you ready for that. And I said, cool. Can I be awake for that? And he goes, no, people tend to scream really loud. So we have to give you Michael Jackson milk. And I said, do you mean propofol? And because propofol is what Michael Jackson used to go to sleep, and propofol is what they usually give you to knock you out. And it's not a clear liquid. It's white and milky. My friends are veterinarians, and they use it, and that's how I knew about it. So when he said, I've got to give you Michael Jackson milk, and I said, does that mean when I'm done, I'll be able to sing in a high-pitched female voice and do the moonwalk? And he thought that was pretty good. So that was my best line. Anyway, they don't use the real paddles. They put sticky pads on you, and they're getting ready to do it, but they let me sit another half hour or so. And miraculously, somehow I converted. In the long run, that's the only time I've ever had AFib, and I can check it because of this, but it was because I was low on potassium. And ever since then, I've been taking a potassium supplement, and I don't have it. So AFib is what it predicts. It was pretty cool for me, and I was really glad I had it. So Bev, go ahead. And Lisa, you had your hand up, didn't you, or not? No? Okay, Bev, go ahead.
Yeah, not kind of, you had your screen up on your phone, and you had one of those little black code thingies. Maybe that's your vaccination.
Yeah, I'll pull it
And
up.
also the if found reward email such and such. How do you add those to your front screen?
Okay. So I
And
created,
how do you get back to that without shutting things off so quickly?
I just pressed the sleep wake button on the side, but on the new phone, on the 14 Pro, you see this in a dull form. This is the always on, but this is the what they call the lock screen.
Yeah.
So yes, when I did my trip to Morocco and Jordan and all that, I had my QR code on here, but the California QR code really didn't work anywhere. But I put reward if found. Now it would do no good to put your phone number on there. So I have made a photo. I actually did it in Keynote because Keynote saves it as a JPEG. But I took one of my photos, I put reward if found, and I put the QR code on it. And then I uploaded it to my photos library and then made that my lock screen. So I just did the mod, I basically, and actually now in photos, you can put text in there. You can use markup. So
Ken, what did you use to generate the QR code?
The California site, you go in and you can get the California QR code. I generated it with that, and then on one of the selections says download the image. So I downloaded the image and I just pasted this. You could do it in Pages and make a screenshot, but if you do it in Keynote, when you save it, it's actually a JPEG.
And then how do you get it onto your screen?
Once you've made it a photo, you add it to your photos library, and then when you make a home screen,
Which I've never done. I just use the default.
when you go to home screen,
Okay.
it says, well, that's not it. Wallpaper. Here it is, wallpaper.
Okay,
So when you customize your wallpaper, add new wallpaper and go in there, or customize current wallpaper, and you can search your photos library for that.
And where is wallpaper? It's down
It's under settings,
found it.
wallpaper. I'm glad you saw that, because to me that was cool. And I'm going to take the barcode off now. But again, I put the reward if found on there and then give the email, because it does no good to have a phone number, because they've got your phone. Speaking of lost phones too, the other thing you can do is, if you ever, you're in a group and you see a phone sitting somewhere and you're going, man, 3 people just left, who was it? You can activate Siri by pressing the side button and say, because my phone's locked right now, I'm going to turn it away from my face. You can see the lock is up there. When I turn it towards my face, it would unlock, but I'm not going to. I say, whose phone is this?
I believe this iPhone belongs to Ken.
Did you guys hear that?
Mm-hmm.
And another thing you can always do too is, so okay, so it's still locked. So I'm going to try swipe up. And then when I hit emergency, you'll notice it says medical ID. Anybody can get in there. And that's the medical ID. And you'll notice my allergies there. I'm allergic to bullets and bombs. And so anybody in my emergency contact, anyone can tap that and call from there. So let's talk about that. A medical ID. You guys should always have a medical ID, and it carries over to your watch, for instance, in that fall. So let's show you where that is. So you swipe down and you go to the health app, and they've changed it again. Let me see. Yeah. So in the upper right corner of the health app is a photo of you. And if you press that, you go here and you tap medical ID. And so you put your information in here. And then if you're going to add a contact, you would hit edit. And you'll go through this whole thing. You have the opportunity to register as a donor and everything else. But when you go down here to the contacts, when it says add emergency contact, it just goes through your phone book. And so you then select who in your phone book you want to have. So I encourage you to do that. And then you can say show when locked is the emergency access, and share during emergency call should be on. And you can put your vitals on there, and first responders know how to get in there. And I'll show you from a locked phone. I'm just swiping up and it says Face ID. Well, it doesn't say, see, I'm not going to put in my code because somebody wouldn't know it if I'm knocked out. And then it goes tap emergency, then medical ID. And now it's all the information for first responders. So.
Oh, and that's handy too, because you can put your email in there too. So it would be a way of, if someone.
Well, the first responders are not going to email you.
Well, right. But if someone else, the police or something, someone turns your phone into the police, hopefully they would know to.
They might, but they would probably call someone in your emergency contacts and say, we have this phone. So the other thing you can always, if you pick it up, you can say, phone my wife or phone my husband or phone, last call. Sometimes it'll do that with Siri, but Siri won't do it sometimes you can set it so it won't do it if it's locked. So medical ID is very key. And then, like I said, whatever you do for the emergency contact will propagate over to the Apple Watch. Any questions on medical ID? Very important that you fill that out. Okay.
And I found the answer.
Okay, Bob, go for it.
You have to have a Watch 6 or newer.
6 or newer. Okay.
6 or newer. I'm on 5. Mine's a 5.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to share the screen with the keynote now. All right. And one thing I want to point out, and this all started when we talked about AFib, but you'll notice certain Apple Watches have a red ring around the crown. And I want to explain the differences. The one with the red, so the Apple Watch comes in 2 flavors. It comes in what they call GPS or GPS and cellular. On the SE, it's only about a $50 difference. On the other, I think it's a $100 difference. And what the difference is, the regular Apple Watch is linked implicitly to an iPhone. And what that means is that all the information that comes on the watch, it still has a GPS. So for instance, you could go out and hike and it would track your fitness and your location and everything, but it'll sync with your phone when you come back rather than constantly updating your phone. But if you're out and walking around and someone texts you, you won't get it on the watch unless your phone is with you. And you can't make any phone calls, you can't listen to podcasts or Apple Music. The Apple Watch will store a little bit of music, but not much. So if it's a GPS only watch, it is implicitly tied to the phone. Now, an example of that is, let's say you're at one of these big gyms and they have Wi-Fi and you've hooked your phone to Wi-Fi because you've been there a million times. And you decide to put your phone in the locker and you're going to go to the Stairmaster machine and it's way at the other end of the building. You're beyond Bluetooth range at that point. So the watch shouldn't connect to the phone. But in fact, if the iPhone is on the Wi-Fi network, however far that Wi-Fi network is, your watch also has Wi-Fi. While you can't just connect it to Wi-Fi, it connects to the Wi-Fi because your phone was connected. So therefore, you have the full capability of the watch, just as if your phone was sitting next to you and it could be 300 feet away. That's the regular GPS version of the watch. The cellular version of the watch so first of all, there's two components if you want your watch to connect autonomously. The first one is you buy the watch with the GPS and cellular. The little red ring means that it has the cellular chip in it. Now, just because you have the one with the cellular chip does not mean you have to pay for a service to get SOS. And what I mean by that is the watch has a cellular radio in it, and every old phone, even if it's not on a plan, every Apple Watch with cellular can always dial 911 for you. That's the way the agreements work with the carriers. So if you have the cellular version of the watch and you're not paying $10 a month with your carrier, you can't get regular text. You can't do phone calls, and you can't stream music. But if there's an incident and it needs to call 911, it will. The second component, and that's how I've always done mine, because I wanted the option of, if I'm out on my mountain bike and my phone gets lost or broken or the battery dies, I could still call SOS if I needed to, or 911. With the new Apple Watch Ultra, which we're going to talk in a minute, and the fact that it supports international, Cheap Ken, who hates monthly payments, is paying $10 a month to have my watch work independently. And for me, that's nicer because I don't have to take my phone with me now, whether it's on my bike or whether I'm just walking. I don't have to carry my phone because everything I need is on my watch, including being able to make phone calls by using the voice, or getting texts, or receiving phone calls, or doing anything else. It is able to operate autonomously. So any questions on the Apple Watch and its connectivity, please, this is the time to bring it up. And I hope I've made it clear. So feel free, if you can't raise your hand, go ahead and unmute yourself. But anyway, and you can tell if your watch has a red ring around the crown, that means it is the cellular version. In the earliest Apple Watch, the cellular was the tip of the crown was red rather than just the ring. Now it's the ring. So the newest thing is the iPhone 14, and I think the SE also, and the Apple Watch can detect if you've been in a car wreck. And this is huge. So it's the similar thing to when you fall, it would come up and said, it looks like you've been in a car crash. And if you don't respond, it will call your emergency SOS contacts and and 911. It would vibrate on your wrist and you would hit cancel if for some reason it didn't. So so here's what it'll do. And then it'll start to count down. It'll say crash detected, notify emergency contacts in 8, and it counts down from 10. So again, there's the red ring. I have a video on car crash detection. I'm going to do it in a few minutes. But these are the new colors. Obviously, the red one has got a red ring, but then it's got a black. They're showing you the cellular version. And by the way, so on the side of the watch, you have a speaker and a microphone. But your watches are waterproof, and they're waterproof down quite a ways. What you do is, if you swim or shower with your watch, you swipe, and let me show you how to do this because it's important. So I'm going to display my watch. Okay, so on the watch, if you swipe up, Oh, maybe it won't when I'm displaying. Let's see here. Oh my gosh, it won't let me get to the screen. Interesting. Well, anyway, if you're on your home screen, you swipe up from the bottom. Yep, that's activity. It hit it. Anyway, you swipe up and there's a little thing that looks like a teardrop. And that teardrop is the water mode. So you press it and then you spin the crown. And what it does is it activates the speaker and burps water out of the speaker. So the water's not sitting in there. So unfortunately, that's it. While I'm on this, I'm going to talk about this in a second. Mine is the new Ultra. So there's a compass mode in it. And you can see I'm moving my wrist around. And so it's compass. Then late at night, or like I'm going to be doing some nighttime photography. On the Ultra, I spin the crown and it gets this red color. And that doesn't get really bright when you're out and about. So let me unshare that now. Okay, back to. All right. And again, here's the lineup with the different bands. I encourage you, the Apple Store has different bands you can try. They're all great in their own respect.
Do older bands fit the Ultra?
Yes, the band, as long as you have the 44, 45 bands, they will fit on the Ultra. So the new Ultra, which we're going to talk about in a second, will fit the older bands if you have the 44 millimeter, not the narrower watch. So they've added, we'll just go around this little chart here on the new Apple Watch 8. Multi-sport workouts, they've added some different ones, some different workouts to it that might be what you were doing. So I don't know it's necessarily our demographic, but you might know someone. There is a temperature sensor in the watch that will chart a female cycle over time and let you know about if you have a missed cycle or ovulation estimates. And it's not, again, necessarily a demographic, but we all know someone this might be good for. And it uses it because there's a temperature sensor in the watch. But I have not heard Apple say this, but I'm a firm believer that the reason that it does not give us a regular temperature sensor is because it's not that accurate. But what it is it can tell over time. And by telling over time, it's going to give you the differentiator. So it may not be exactly 98.6, and they don't want you to go by that. I think they will refine it so you'll eventually be able to tell air temperature and body temperature. But right now, they can gather enough data that they can tell trends. And that's what you're looking for when you're doing cycle tracking. And that's all I know about it. So going across to international roaming. Now, if you do have a cellular watch and a cellular phone, you can go other places. The battery life is improved. Now you can go back and see your history of AFib whenever you've done the ECG. So they have edge-to-edge display. It's a little bit bigger. The 8 has a slightly bigger screen than, it's almost the same as the 7, but the 7 was a big step up. Advanced sleep stage, sleep cycling and stuff. Medication reminder. This is the newest thing in iOS 16 and in the watch. You can put your medications in there and if you need it at particular times, it will bring that up. Little bit faster charging, new faces and bands, then crash detection, which we're going to talk in a second. And of course, the blood oxygen. So, and the temperature sensing, like I said, it's got it on. I think it's going to eventually be beyond that, but right now it will only do cycle tracking. All right, so the watch, the SE, the GPS version, is $249 and then $299 for GPS and cellular. There's no question here. If you get this, go for the cellular, even if you're not going to pay for the monthly service. So the next one is the Ultra. You've had a little sneak peek of it with mine. This thing it's designed for, okay, Mary, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, it was about the charging. And the Apple Watches have their own charger. Is there any kind of movement? Is that changing so that you can use the same charger for phones and watches? And
No,
okay,
because it's so specific, and you got to remember the target is so small, and for it to sit on the charger, it has to have that little well in it so that it kind of stays centered. But I have, like when I travel, I have a charger that has that built in. In fact, I love my little charger. It does my Apple Watch in what's called nightstand mode, which means it's on its edge. So I just tap the night table and it brings up the time. And it also does my AirPods, and it does my watch wireless, or my phone wirelessly. So there is some talk, and I haven't seen it rolled out in the iPhone, where you could hook the cable to the iPhone and charge the watch, but not yet. But when I'm traveling, I take a really small Apple Watch charger that is about the size of a key fob, like to unlock your car. And I charge it, and I can get 2 full charges out of my Apple Watch with it. So anyway, the Ultra, speaking of battery life, one of the big things is the new Ultra has a 60-hour battery life. So the Ultra it's a departure, and it's pretty amazing. First of all, it comes in 3 different band styles, and the old bands will work in it, so it's not a problem. But the first one here is called the Alpine Loop, and it goes through the holder and comes back and loops on itself. And it actually stays, even if it's unclipped, it really stays where it is. You can see this was some very ingenious technology, because this loop is not sewn on, it is actually sewn into the fabric. It is essentially one piece. And then it has this titanium link on it that just goes underneath. It's really amazing. The shell of the watch is titanium. So while it's a bigger watch, it has a much bigger battery, a much bigger face. It's only minimally heavier because it's titanium. You can see here the face is so big. One thing that's unique is the other Apple Watch, the crystal on the top rolls around the edge. This one sits slightly below. In other words, the titanium is raised from it just ever so slightly. It's actually flush with it, but if you hit anything, you're going to hit the titanium. The third watch band is this one, and it's designed for scuba diving. And the way that it's because it's a rubberized type one. And what they do is this one that doesn't have the 2 little clips on it, for over a wetsuit, because a wetsuit is much thicker than your normal wrist, they have just an extra one of these bands they sell that's slightly longer. And that being said, if you're a diver, you'll appreciate this. It will work as a dive computer. One of the large dive computer companies, Oceanic, has an app for this. Now, I don't know, it's not out yet. It's not going to be out till November, but the watch is good down to 100 feet, which is what sport diving is. And it can go deeper than that, but they're only certifying it at that. So it's the Ultra. And then the other thing is on this, so normally the watch has the crown and the oval button. Now there's an additional oval button on the other side of the watch. And the idea with it is you can customize it. It can be a button to do whatever not whatever. There's about 8 things it will do. And that is, so if you're like with a dive glove, or I'm skiing with a a glove on, I can activate the button really easily by just squeezing it, even through a jacket and things like that. So that's the Ultra, and it comes only in a cellular version. And this is, again, one of the faces, and you can see here, this is one I showed you. It's got a constant altimeter. It shows what your 45 degrees are. And so this is the UV. These are the, oh, this is your fitness. And you can configure these complications however you want. There's a feature in iOS 16, and it should work on all watches, called Backtrack. And Backtrack is pretty interesting. Let me see if I'm not going to play this video. Oh, actually, no, this isn't a video. So Backtrack, I'll show you on my watch in a second. But Al, you brought up this question a while back, is can you have two? There's a few people that want to have a watch on while they're sleeping and then a different one during the day. So in iOS 16 and in watchOS 9, you can now have multiple watches. And you go into the Apple Watch app on the phone, and you click on all watches in the upper left where I have it circled here. And then you go in and you would add a watch, and then you add the watch, and it will auto switch between the two. So what that means is if they're both sitting on your dresser and you put one watch on in the morning and you raise your hand, that's the watch that it will default to for all your information, all your faces, everything else. And of course, they all come back and then keep your log of your heart and everything else combined. But then if you want to sleep at night, you put that watch on the charging stand or whatever, then you take this watch and put it on, and you can have sleep tracking. So you can now do separate, more than two watches. I only had two. I'm getting rid of my old one, but I was able to at least capture this and display it. So and somebody had a question up there for a second. Bob, you did?
I kind of answered my own question, but the question was, when you go to order a watch, it has a thing to choose what size of band. But the thing is, it's in millimeters.
Yes.
So how do you measure to know what band you want? It's just a general question.
Yeah, so good question. And part of that is, for instance, when Apple embarked on the Apple Watch, which it's amazing how well received it is now, and it was really very little in the beginning, they went with some traditional things. And I'll give you an example here. So the first thing is the watch, when you see it, is always at 10:06 or whatever it is. Actually, this isn't a good example because we need the times on it. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to go back to a regular watch. This one, no. All right, so here's a good example. You can see this watch. It's at 10:09:30, okay? Well, that's when Steve Jobs pulled it out and displayed it for the first time. But if you ever look at any watch ad, like Rolex would be a great example, their hand will be at 10:10. And the reason for that is, like the Rolex crown is always at the front. So they did this, the watch companies always did that to display it. Now, the size of the watch across there, it has always been measured in millimeters. So that when you see a watch and you could say, oh, how big is that watch? That's what the width is. It's not the length of the band, but in fact, with the Apple Watch, they started out with a 40 and a 44 millimeter, and I think now it's a 42 and a 45, if I'm not mistaken. And it really has to do with the width of the band and the width and how wide the phone is. I'm sorry, how wide the watch is. And if you have a smaller wrist, you go with the smaller one. If you have a bigger wrist, the big one's fine. Most people go with the bigger one. You get a little bit better battery life. But right now it's offered in a 42 and a 45, if I'm not mistaken. That being said, the Ultra is 49 millimeters, but it can use the same watch bands that the 44 does. So the other thing on a watch, to go back to tradition, so when watches first came out back in the old days, you know, they're gear driven. They were gear driven, and you wound them, you wound the spring, because there weren't batteries back then. You wound the crown to load the spring, and it was an hour hand and a minute hand. And those are gears. So when they added a second hand, that was considered the first complication. And when they call it a complication, it means it was more complex. They added one gear. Then they added, somebody came up with another complication, and that's when you had the date. And the date is a wheel that spins around. Then they had a day date. That's an additional complication. And then they had the chronographs. That would be where it's a stopwatch. And there you had another complication. So each one of those additional devices was more complicated, had more gearing, and that's why they call it a complication. On the Apple Watch, it's, in this case, it's the complication. These four corners have complications. I have four different complications in the center that I can do. This is a compass. This is Apple Music. This is a stopwatch or a military time. You could have a different date and time in there. So it's amazing what the watch can do, but each one of those things is called a complication, and you can set that. I prefer, what I do on mine normally is I will put my heart rate in the upper left corner. I will put in the upper right corner. Actually, let's go to my complication, pull it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change. This is the complication for the Ultra that has the compass and everything, but I'm going to go to my old complication. So I press and hold the screen, and I can go to other complications. That's not it. There is, this is the one I have. So starting in the upper left, it's a heart rate, and I use heart watch. So if I tap that, I'm able to see my heart rate. Over here is the time, and I can set that anywhere I want. Like if I'm traveling somewhere else, I keep it on Cupertino so that if I'm in, like I'm going to Iceland at the end of this month, if I'm there, I'll know what time it is back home. The no events today is my calendar. So if I were to tap that, it would bring up my calendar. The date is here. That brings up my calendar also. This is messages. If I tap that, it shows me my messages. This is my ECG. This is my fitness. Again, if I tap any one of those, it will launch it. This is sunrise and sunset. So it's 8 hours and 11 minutes till sunset. And this is based wherever I am. It's GPS based wherever I am. And then over here is the weather. Today in Lincoln, it should be a high of 89. It's currently 73. So I have all that information on the face of my watch. But the best part is I can dive into any of these. So set your watch up and customize it. There's lots of different ones you can do. And you set these in the Apple Watch app on the phone. And then once you have them in here, you can do whatever you want. There's some digital ones. This was one, oops, I don't know why it timed me out. Oh, okay. So this is one that used to have my battery level in the upper left corner. This is an astronomy one. It can give you the phases of the moon. This is the one when it's active. You can have your countdown. You can have your distance. Just a simple old watch. You can even make the background look like one of the faces. A big digital one. This is one of my original ones I used to do a lot. And they're all kept in here, and you can do whatever you want with them. And then Minnie Mouse and Mickey Mouse. It used to be Minnie, but now if you have Mickey and you press the screen, it will announce the time to you in a Minnie Mouse or a Mickey Mouse voice. And there's my current favorite. Okay, any questions on the Apple Watch faces? Good.
Yeah, can you store watch faces as favorites, or do you just need to go in and change it whenever you feel like changing it?
Well, it stores your most recent ones, and then you can, so like if I go here, I hit plus and I can add more. So I'm not sure if I can move them around, but you could go through and I could edit it and I could delete a certain one. And actually, if you get one you like, you can hit the share button and I could share this with, I could text this Apple Watch face to somebody.
Hey, Ken,
Yeah.
can you change if you have a whole series of favorite watch faces, but you want to change the order that they display? So
Yeah,
easy
I'm not
access?
sure about that. So so if you press and hold, I'm not sure. I can swipe it away and remove it. Let's see if it's in the watch app on the phone. So in the watch app, I have my faces up here. Yeah, so I can change there. See, there it's pretty much my order that we just went through them, although there's Toy Story and stuff. But I can hit edit. Yeah, you can, in edit, I can move these up or down.
Great, perfect.
And
That's
get
helpful.
rid of them. So that's done on the phone itself in the watch app on the phone.
Yeah. If you
Okay.
got a whole bunch of watch faces and certain ones are more frequently accessed than others, that's really helpful.
Yeah, and even like time of year or certain things like that. Like when I ski, I have a thing that tracks my skiing and things like that. So in the winter, I might want that up, and I might want the weather to display for up at Truckee versus weather in somewhere else. So you can do different things like that. Good question. Okay, so back to sharing Keynote. All right. I'm really happy with the Ultra.
October.
Yeah. Did you order the thin band?
Yeah, I ordered the
Alpine whatever.
Yeah,
It's the one that's the runner kind of one.
Yeah, I think that's the one I got. I'm just glad that my 3 dozen watch bands and stuff are still
Yeah.
I swap mine out a lot for different occasions. And
yeah, I'm the same way, and I'm really happy that the old bands work on the new one.
Yeah.
I was worried about that.
Yeah.
You know who was really worried was Renee Ritchie. He seems to have every band there is.
Oh.
Not a lot to say about AirPods Pro, but I got to tell you, this is one of my best Apple purchases ever. So if I'm on a short flight, I'll use them on that because they have noise canceling. And you actually have 3 levels. You can have them work as just regular headphones with no noise canceling. You can have them work as what's called transparency, which means you can hear other stuff and they're canceling a little bit, or you can have them on full noise canceling. I actually use real big when I'm on long flights, because these will only work if you have both of them in your ears. They're good for 6 hours now on the new one, 5 on the old one. So if I'm on if I'm going through airports and I'm on 14 hours worth of flights, I've got my big ones that last 14 hours, but I can also charge them. But if you're not familiar how all the AirPods work, there's the original AirPods and the AirPods Pro. So both versions of the AirPods Pro have a softer little tip that fits in your ear, and that's what helps secure it so the other sound doesn't come in. It also keeps them from falling out. The newest ones have 4 different sizes, where the original AirPod only had 2. But the deal with this is they have batteries inside them. So where I use mine the most is if I'm heading to Costco or I'm going to Home Depot. I take, and I always have this pouch in this little carrier in my pocket, and I pull one out and I put it in my ear. Now, when you only use one, you don't get noise canceling or anything else because it wouldn't make sense. But that will last for now 6 hours, used to be 5 hours. So I have my phone with me, or if your watch has cellular, you could be playing it from your watch to there. Don't even have to have your phone with you. But anyway, you can use that. You can hear everything else, but I listen to podcasts all the time. That's how I catch up on all my podcasts. And when I'm just going around doing different stuff, if I'm, weeding the yard, whatever it is, I have it with me. If I put 2 of them in, you get great fidelity, and they're wonderful. And then you can do noise canceling if you want. But if you do one in one ear, so we'll go by the existing one, the AirPods 1, that's good for 5 hours. Well, after 5 hours, and it gives me a beep beep letting me know the battery's low, I take the one out of my right ear and I put it in the case. I take the left ear, put it in the left ear, and now that will work for 5 hours. And in the case, the other one will charge in about a half hour's time. So I can constantly go for up to 24 hours because the case itself charges the AirPod. So that's how you can make it extend its life, but it's also just a lot nicer if you're around people and stuff. You can have it in. It has a microphone. You can receive phone calls. You can also do the thing called live listen, which is a feature that comes with hearing aids. So I just can't tell you enough how wonderful it's been for me. And I'd had mine for a while, but I got the new ones here. And
Hey,
they're
Ken?
fantastic. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, I know that with the new ones, you can have a spatial audio profile that scans your ear, apparently for fit and have you noticed any difference as far as
I think it does it on the original ones because I think I did it. I think it has to do with iOS 16 because my AirPods came after my phone. I got the phone on the 16th, but my AirPods and my Ultra Wide